Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out. And the best way to do that is through email. And so with Christmas coming, New Year's, and so forth, if you have holiday memories to share, show ideas, and so forth, feel free to reach out to me. All right, so some of the audio platforms that I'm on Spreaker, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. These are just to name a few. All right, so this episode is the launch of the Christmas-themed December shows. I'm going to talk about the origin of elves. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to get into some thoughts and then, getting into the facts. So my thoughts on this particular topic with elves and everything. It reminds me a lot of the aspects of fables that we hear when we're growing up. And so fables are quite different across countries, regions, and so forth. But most of the time, they all mean the same thing. They all have this overarching aspects of giving people their understanding, giving the children their understanding of a moral compass, a moral code. And within that is really resonant with a book that I'm currently reading. And it sinks into what do these particular fables tie into the cultural value of something. And so there's other stories that link into the, case in point, brownies for so to speak. And I've come to find out that the Girl Scout level of being a brownie is actually reminiscent of this particular fable. And so I'm going to give you the somewhat of the rundown of it. So essentially what it is, it's a story that is told by an elder, which is the grandmother of the family, from what I understand. And she's guiding and telling these young boys about the stories of brownies. And so what they would do, they would joyfully come in and clean up and do daily tasks to help out the people who dwelled the house, and out of comfort and love, that no payment required for it. And so these boys, particularly in this story, have the mindset of, we want to find a brownie of our own in order to essentially use, so we don't have use this skill, use their skills, so we don't have to do too much around the house. And so they go on a journey and they find and they look and they search for brownies, and comes to discover that this quality and these traits are within, you guessed it, these boys. And so there's so many stories that has that remnants of embarking onto children, that there's a lot of value into the aspects of issues like this or situations like this. And when we think about the aspects of elves, they have this similar trait, but they mean different things, and that the origin is different according to tales, legends. And all of us have that innate curiosity and thirst for a good story. And, that's why we enjoy movies so much. That's why we enjoy, to each his own with the aspects of being an avid reader. That's why we're drawn to entertainment, because we want that good hook of a story. And so, when we get into the holiday season here, particularly with Christmas, the foundation of Christmas is all about goodwill towards men. And so, the elves and the tradition of it is really reminiscent of that aspect of goodwill towards man. But when you dig deeper and you find out the origin, it most of the time turns or sometimes with fables like this, or with iconic imagery, as things of this nature. They don't quite start out in the most humblest of fate or imagery. And it's quite interesting how things we take pieces from something that is valuable, and then in itself, it grows into something bigger than what it started out to be. And then, for instance, the aspects of, people have so many different representations or thought process about the aspects of Christmas. But for the most part, a lot of stuff that is embedding, when you think about the imagery of Christmas, it's taken from Viking traditions and the aspects of the winter solstice, and giving and with the Viking tradition, the pagan tradition of giving homage to the certain deities that they believed in, and then illuminating the long dark winter by doing these certain celebrations. And now with the aspects of Christmas in itself, the foundation is about giving respect to the all and powerful Jesus Christ and his many blessings and gratitudes that he has bestowed upon us. But it's quite interesting how, the focal point of Jesus Christ is also merged with the aspects of, different traditions, and how that is really interesting, carrying these thought processes along with how, Christmas is formed in its image of today. And this is, really relatable into the aspects of what elves are thought about as of today, too. Even though, it's not the same as the aspects of the thought process of Jesus Christ and, people who are Christians who believe in Christ and so forth. But it's just quite interesting how, these certain imageries are thought and accompanying with Christmas and how they come to be. All right, with this said, I am going to get into the aspects and facts about the origin of elves. All right, of course, sources will be provided for you in this episode. So, the modern concept of Christmas elves as Santa Claus helpers at the North Pole evolved from ancient Norse and Germanic mythology, where elves known as Afar or Huffolk were powerful, magical beings associated with nature and in the natural world. Their transformation to the cheerful, toy-making figures of contemporary Christmas lore began in the 19th century. So the 19th century was the time, when you think about it, it makes a whole lot of sense why the shift would happen, because this is the start of the Industrial Revolution, and this is the start of the Victorian era, and then in both of these, the cups, but the aspects of both of these is consumerism driven, consumer driven, which is a good thing in itself. With the aspects of the when you think about the implement of employment and people striving for other goals in order to support their family, and also to have this imagery of having a surplus in the family budget to be able to buy other stuff besides what is the necessary needs for the family, or so forth. And so you can also, which goes without in the same realm of this, which goes without saying, but some people know this, some people don't. So I can't really say that. But me being an avid lover of history here, we should give a great credit to the Victorian era, particularly Queen Victoria, with implementing what we think about the modern day aspects of Christmas by, putting trees in the house and so forth, and decorating the trees and putting presents under the tree and so forth. And so this is quite interesting how the transition of elves started to change around this time of century in the 19th century. So significantly influenced by literary works such as Clement Clarke Moore's 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, which describes Santa as a jolly old elf. And later by stories like Louisa May Alcott's 1856 work, which introduced the ideas of Christmas elves in literature. The image of elves in Santa's workshop was further popularized by illustrations and publications like Goody Ladies, the Good Ladies book, and on Goody Ladies book in the 1964 Rankin-based television special, including with this, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now, the origin of elves are rooted in Norse mythology, where they were known as I said, Avtar, or Hudfolk, powerful entities linked to forests, rivers, and nature, featuring they are both capable of benevolent and malevolent acts. Means they're both have their hands in good and evil or bad deeds. So the connection between elves and Christmas was solidified in the 19th century, as I was saying again about the poem, and with A Visit from St. Nicholas being a pivotal moment describing Santa as a jolly old elf. So the ideas of elves as Santa's workshop assistants was popularized through illustrations in magazines, again with the Good Ladies book, and later through, again, the 1964 claymation Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and then again in 2003 and from the film Elf. So the tradition also draws from Scandinavian folklore, where figures like the Danish Nis and the Swedish Tomte, guardian spirits of homes and farms, were not toy makers but protectors of households, a role that evolved into modern elf imagery. So the story of the elves and the shoemaker by the Brahms Grimm, published in 1812, is another early example linking elves to Christmas, depicting them helping a poor shoemaker complete work before the holiday. Alright, so let's get into more aspects about elves here. So, why are elves associated with Christmas? This is what this article is, well, this source that I'm reading from is asking. So, the evolution of Santa Claus. So, the history of Santa Claus began with a real person, St. Nicholas. And so, that this guy, this man of God, he, for those who know and those who don't, I'll give a brief rundown. So, what he did was he would often give, and when he knew people were in need or at their last, on that last doorstep, and really in dire straits, he would give in order to get them out of such plight. So with this said, I'm going to get into the details in which they talk about him. So the stories of St. Nicholas' kindness and generosity are common throughout Europe. By contrast, his modern counterpart, Santa Claus, is a more recent and largely American invention. So early immigrants brought their customs and stories to the American melting pot of the 18th and 19th century, including the way they celebrate Christmas. So in 1821, a New York City newspaper published a poem by Clement Clarke Moore entitled A Visit from St. Nicholas in his story, which drew on Dutch and Scandinavian traditions to envision St. Nicholas' visit on the night before Christmas, which captivated the public imagination. So writers and artists built upon a Santa legend. They added a red suit, a bottomless bag of gifts, a fondness for cookies and milk, and a North Pole toy shop populated by elves. So, what are elves? And here's the explanation of it. They say from Greek gods to British pixies, many ancient Europe folk stories focus on magical beings who sometimes interact in the human world. Unlike the engaging little Christmas elves, however, these supernatural creatures weren't always so kind. Scandinavian elves were somewhat fickle guardians of a household, protecting the family, farm, livestock, and crops. However, if they thought they were being mistreated or ignored, they might act out by souring milk, breaking dishes, or even poisoning crops. Ancient Norse mythology tells of hidden folk, while Scottish lore speaks of tiny beings known as brownies. In most legends, these magical beings might by turn be helpful or peckish, which, naughty, bad. So even in William Shakespeare's time, elfish figures like Puck and A Midsummer Night's Dream were envisioned as tricksters. So Christmas elves. Since elf lore predates Christianity, elves traditionally weren't associated with the Christmas holiday. So when and how did elves become a part of our Christmas traditions? Possibly the earliest connection between Christmas and elves appeared in The Elves and the Shoemaker by the Brothers Grimm in 1812, which was a fairy tale of a poor shoemaker, as I mentioned before, visited by these elves who helped complete his order before Christmas. There's also a line in Clement Clarke Moore's A Visit from St. Nicholas, describing Santa as a jolly old elf. So the Christmas Elves, a story published in Harper's Bazaar in 1871, tells of magical elves who visit good children during the holiday season. Another popular 19th century publication, Goody Lady's Book, featured artwork depicting Santa Claus and his elves. Several decades later, artist Norman Rockwell also included elves in some of his famous paintings of Santa. So, in the 20th century, marketing and television expanded Santa lore, featuring elves as main characters, from Rudolph's friendly friend to Buddy the Elf. Two-head elf Bernards and Santa Clauses, and the Santa Claus again. And Santa Claus and the elves have become permanently intertwined. Santa's little helpers. So nowadays, Christmas elves are distinctively different from the magical beings from which they descend. So helpful throughout, fun and loving, and also hardworking elves add yet another facet to the Christmas story. And so I'm going to add on to this and then wrap everything up. So it's quite interesting with the aspects of the Santa Claus. That movie came out when I was a child. And so there's a lot of, it's quite interesting because I saw the behind the scenes of how that was produced and created. So they use a lot of lore in the aspects, of cultivating a new image about, but embracing old traditions of what Santa Claus is thought about and what elves are thought about. And so when Disney got things right, they were really good about redefining what traditions mean. And so this time with and it's unfortunate when they brought back the show, Santa Claus, it was just a hellscape. But, what can you say about Disney now? But with the Santa Claus and the other movies, but particularly with the Santa Claus, what they did right was really give a lot of personality to the aspects of the relationship between elves and Santa. Other elves and the main elf, the big elf, Santa, and implementing how pivotal, how important his role is into the development of a child and their wonderment and their imagination too. All right, so with this said, I'm ending here, and I would like to know what you all think. Forgive me for all the buzzing and stuff that was going on in the background. I get a lot of alerts, and then the chickens in the background. So tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.